Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the BG Show. I'm here to do a review of Flight Risk, a brand new movie starring Mark Wahlberg, directed by Mel Gibson. And boy, are we in for a doozy today, as we already have a nominee for possibly the worst movie of 2025. And honestly, I think this is the first movie I've seen of 2025, so we're off to a good start here. Let's just get right into it. As always, first, non-spoiler thoughts. And this movie was just, in a way, this movie's almost charming a bit because it's a throwback to the 90s. Or the early 2000s and just these mediocre movies that we would seem to get. But there just was no quality here. I think it may have even been, I've heard this on other podcasts, but like a lost COVID project. Anytime you get like a movie or a TV show where there's like three characters in a room or a set for the entire show, that seems to be what it is. And that's really what this is. There were some entertaining moments. There are some decent twists. But overall, it's pretty basic. It's pretty generic. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but certainly I don't think it's worth going to the movie for. I have the unlimited pass, so it's fine for me, but I don't know if I'd spend $15 to see this. Especially when, honestly, if at this point $15 can get you, I have the plans with the ads. I don't think they're that bad, especially on Netflix. Like, that can get you 2 months of Netflix for $7, so it's kind of a lot of money when you think of it that way. A very, very bizarre role for both Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson. I guess Mark Wahlberg maybe just saw this as having fun. I mean, he still probably makes a lot of money for these movies, so not all of them could be great, but it's just very, very confusing for someone who has been nominated for an Oscar before and been in kind of bigger movies like The Departed to be in kind of a role like this. It's very surprising. For Mel Gibson, this is the first movie he's directed in 9 years. I don't know why he came back to do this one. Maybe he's warming up because knew he was going to make Passion of the Christ too. So maybe this is like he wanted to get his directing skills kind of sharpened up a little bit, even if it's like a totally separate genre, obviously. But yeah, let me get into spoiler review now because there's not too much to talk about. It's like I said, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but I certainly expect it to be in the bottom tier of movies that I am going to see this year. If I was going to rank it in last year's crop of movies, now is it as bad as Madam Web? Probably my all-time worst movie. No, but it probably would have been in the top 10 last year. So right now, this is my spoiler review in 3, 2, 1. So basically, the plot line of this movie is very simple. Topher Grace, beginning of the movie, the FBI busts into some room which you're supposed to believe is Alaska, and they do this scene where Topher Grace looks out the window, and it's so obviously CGI. It's so obvious they're not actually in, forget Alaska, but even a cold location, and there's like a CGI moose. And that was very disorienting off the bat. They break in. You find out he is the accountant for this guy, Moretti, and it's just code like, oh, Italian last name, so that's the mob. Pretty much they're transporting him on this plane from, I guess, remote Alaska to Anchorage, and then from Anchorage to Seattle, so he can testify. Obviously, he's in danger of being killed by the mob because they know he's going to testify against him. So he's being protected by this FBI agent who, I don't forget the actress's name. I believe she played Mary in Passion of the Christ, but I'll have to look into it. But I don't blame her so much. I kind of feel bad because she wasn't given the best movie or best script to go with, so I thought she did the best job of what she can do. Very confusing, just side note, that Gina Carano was not given this part. It seems like the perfect part for Gina Carano, kind of like a badass Marshal, U.S. Marshal or FBI person. And, Mel Gibson and her kind of, I don't want to say run in the same circles, but you would think after Gina Carano was somewhat canceled out of Hollywood, it would be a natural fit for her to work for Mel Gibson, who underwent similar circumstances. So as they get on the plane, Mark Wahlberg's the pilot, and he comes off as just kind of like a goofy guy. He's joking around, he's flirting with her. But it takes a dark turn as the Topher Grace, who's kind of tied up in the back, notices the ID of the pilot, and it's not Mark Wahlberg. It's someone totally different, and he realizes that Mark Wahlberg is essentially like a fraud, and he obviously probably killed whoever the pilot was. So not a bad premise for the movie, but just so many plot holes. I think the thing that bothers me the most is the opportunities they had to kill Mark Wahlberg. I mean, he turns out to be just this crazy, like, almost rapist, and adds this whole twist to the character, which I read wasn't even part of the original character. And it's just like this depraved person, and they could have killed him a million times, but they decided not to. And I understand that first you don't want to kill him, but after a certain amount of time, it just became kind of ridiculous. She didn't want to, like, untie Topher Grace the entire time, which was also super confusing. Like, I understand he's a criminal, but he's a white-collar criminal. He's an accountant. I don't think he was going to attack you. There was no one else on the plane. So I just thought it was so annoying that not only did they not kill Mark Wahlberg, but she never, like, it took her so long to, like, to free Topher Grace and let him help. Eventually, as the movie goes on, and there's a whole, like, side plot where she now needs help landing the plane because they tie up Mark Wahlberg in the back. And the aviation expert who's helping her land the plane is this Indian guy. And it's like I'm saying, this is like a 90s movie because it's like before they really push diversity. So you have 3 main white characters, and then the only supporting, characters who aren't white is like the Indian tech guy. And he just starts instantly flirting with her, and like it's so disorienting, and like kind of funny in a way. I guess it was supposed to be funny, but it actually is funny. And when you just think about Mel Gibson, like, directing this, I don't know why, it's just funny to think about. And then, so he's helping her land the plane, and Mark Wahlberg, they have, like, at least 2 or 3 scenes where he, like, breaks free of his chains, and then there's a struggle, and then they, like, shoot him again, and then there's a struggle, and they shoot him again, and eventually, they uncover this whole side plot where the director of the FBI turns out to be the mole. Her boss's boss, and her boss gets killed by this director in a car accident, and then she eventually lands the plane, and Topher Grace is but one of the paramedics tries to kill Topher Grace, putting a bag over his head, and eventually they catch the director of the FBI by basically they heard him on the other end of the phone giving the order, so they caught him, and that's how the movie ends. Obviously there's a lot more going on as the movie goes, but the entire movie pretty much takes place in this airplane from start to finish. And as much as I rip on this movie, it is charming in a way. 90 minutes in and out. They don't waste any time. There's no boring setup. You instantly know the setup. They're instantly on the plane. They're instantly taking off. And the movie gets going. So I really, really like this in a way. I know I said at the beginning of the video I suggest not seeing it. But honestly, now thinking about it, I think the fact that it's 90 minutes makes it somewhat charming. If this was 2 hours, 2:15, 2:20, like Den of Thieves 2, which I haven't seen yet, I have a feeling will be way too long. I would not like it, but making it 90 minutes, I think makes this like a very classic kind of action movie. So that's my review of Flight Risk. I don't know, I keep talking about it more positively because I said it was one of the worst movies of the year as I started the video. Now I'm going to say decent, but it is still one of the worst movies of the year that I'll end up seeing. But in terms of like stupid entertainment, I should say, it's pretty good. And you'll get some laughs, both laughing with it and laughing at it. But just the plot is so incredibly weak, and there's just not a lot of using your brain or things we haven't seen before, cool special effects. So that's my review of Flight Risk. Thanks guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.